cAnAAn Crawford, grade 10.
Today I will be reciting a tale of two star-crossed lovers. And before you say anything, it was not written by William Shakespeare, but was one of his influences for one of his many classics. Now, without further ado, a tale as old as time, song as old as rhyme, Pyramus and Thisbe. Once upon a time, the deep red berries of the mulberry tree were white as snow. The change in color came about strangely and sadly. The death of two young lovers was the cause. Pyramus and Thisbe, he the most beautiful youth, and she the loveliest maiden in all the East, lived in Babylon, the city of Queen Semiramis, in houses so close together that one wall was common to both. Growing up thus side by side, they learned to love each other. They longed to marry, but their parents forbade. Love, however, cannot be forbidden. The more that flame is covered up, the hotter it burns. Also, love can always find a way. It was impossible that these two whose hearts were on fire should be kept apart. In the wall both houses shared, there was a little chink. No one before had noticed it, but there is nothing a lover does not notice. Our two young people discovered it, and through it they were able to whisper sweetly back and forth. Pyramus on one side, Thisbe on the other. The hateful wall that separated them had now become their means of reaching each other. But for you, we could touch, kiss, they would say. At least you let us speak together. You give loving words, a passage to reach loving ears. We are not ungrateful. So they would talk, and as night came on and they must part, each would press on the wall kisses that cannot go through to the lips on the other side. Every morning, when the dawn had put out the stars, and the sun's rays had dried the hoar frost on the grass, they would steal to the crack, and standing there, utter words of burning love. And now lament their hard fate, but always in softest whispers. A day came, finally, when they could endure no longer. They decided that very night, they would try to slip away and steal out through the city into the open country, where at last they could be together in freedom. They agreed to meet at a well-known place, the tomb of Ninnis, under a tree there, a tall mulberry full of snow-white berries, near which a cool spring bubbled up. The plan pleased them, and it seemed to them that at last the sun sank into the sea and night arose. In the darkness, Thisbe crept out and made her way in all secrecy to the tomb. Pyramus had not come. Still she waited for him, her love making her bold. But of a sudden, she saw by the light of the moon a lioness. The beast had made a kill. Her jaws were bloody, and she was coming to slake her thirst in the spring. She was still far away enough for Thisbe to escape, but as she fled, she dropped her cloak. The lioness came upon it on her way back to her lair, and she mouthed it and tore it, before disappearing into the woods. This is what Pyramus saw when he appeared a few minutes later. Before him lay the blood-stained shreds of a cloak, and clear in the dust were the tracks of a lioness. The conclusion was inevitable. He never doubted that he knew all. Thisbe was dead. He had let his love, a tender maiden, venture into a dangerous place, and had not been there first to protect her. "It is I who killed you," he said. He lifted up what was left of the cloak and carried it to the mulberry tree. "Now," he said, "you shall drink my blood too." He drew his sword and plunged it into his side. The blood spurted up over the berries and dyed them a dark red. Thisbe, although terrified of the lioness, was still more afraid to fail her lover. She ventured to go back to the tree of the tryst, the mulberry full of the shining white fruit. She could not find it. A tree was there, but not one gleam of white was on the branches. As she stared at it, something moved on the ground beneath. She started back, shuddering. But in a moment, peering through the shadows, she saw what was there. It was Pyramus, bathed in blood and dying. She flew to him and threw her arms around him. She cried out to him, "It is I, your Thisbe, your dearest." At the sound of her voice, he opened his eyes for one look, then death closed them. The gods, she saw the sword fallen from his hand, and beside it, her cloak, stained and torn. She understood all. "It is your own hand that killed you," she said, "and your love for me. I too can be brave. I too can love. Only death would have had the power to separate us, and it shall not have that power now." She plunged into her heart the sword that was still wet with his life's blood. The gods were pitiful at the end, and their lovers' parents too. The deep red fruit of the mulberry is the everlasting memorial of these two lovers, and one urn holds the ashes of the two whom not even death could part.